The morning started like any other Tuesday in Milwaukee. Coffee brewing, rain tapping against the kitchen window, and my wife Marissa applying her third coat of mascara while checking her phone every 30 seconds. I watched her from across the breakfast table, noting how she angled the screen away from me, how her manicured fingers moved with practiced secrecy. "Another late showing tonight," she announced without looking up. "The Peterson house. Could be a big commission." I nodded, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Third one this week. Market's hot right now." Her voice carried that edge it had developed over the past 6 months, sharp, defensive, like she was constantly preparing for an argument I hadn't started yet. Marissa grabbed her purse and keys, pausing at the door. For a moment, I thought she might say something real, something that acknowledged the growing distance between us. Instead, she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror and left without another word. The house felt different after she was gone. Quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like the silence after a storm passes, when you're still waiting to assess the damage. I finished my coffee and headed to the workshop. 20 years of marriage, and I'd built my custom furniture business from nothing. Started in the garage, moved to a small warehouse on the north side, built a reputation one piece at a time. Marissa used to be proud of that. Used to bring her friends by to show off the dining sets and bedroom furniture I crafted by hand. Now she acted like my calloused fingers and sawdust-stained clothes embarrassed her. My phone buzzed around noon. Text from my sister Lindsay. "Coffee later? Need to talk." Lindsay worked as a paralegal downtown, smart as a whip and twice as tough. If she needed to talk, it wasn't about the weather. We met at Romano's, a little place near her office where the coffee was strong and the booths offered privacy. Lindsay slid a manila folder across the table before I'd even ordered. "Don't open it here," she said, "but you need to see what's inside." "What is this?" "Divorce papers. Filed yesterday. Your wife's attorney is good, expensive and thorough. They're asking for everything, Ethan. The house, the car, half your business." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. 20 years of marriage, and she couldn't even tell me herself. Had to let me find out through legal channels. "How did you—" "Court filings are public record. I check them every morning for work." Lindsay leaned forward. "There's more. I did some digging. Marissa's been restructuring her finances for months, moving money around, consulting with attorneys, getting the house appraised." I thought about all those late showings, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd started dressing differently. Designer clothes, expensive perfume, a new gym membership she claimed was for networking. "She's been planning this for a while," I said. "Looks that way. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I opened the folder in my truck, reading every line of legal text. The demands were brutal and comprehensive. Marissa wanted the house we'd lived in for 15 years, the Mercedes I'd bought her for our anniversary, and 50% of my business, including all equipment, inventory, and future earnings. At the bottom of the last page, a yellow sticky note in Lindsay's handwriting. She thinks she's already won. That evening, Marissa came home with takeout from an expensive restaurant downtown. She moved around the kitchen with unusual energy, almost cheerful. When she handed me the divorce papers, her smile was practiced and cold. "I think we both know this has been coming," she said. "I've tried to make this as fair as possible." I read through the documents slowly, noting how she watched my face for reactions. Her lawyer had done good work. The language was precise, the demands legally sound. On paper, it looked like she was entitled to everything she was asking for. "The house, the car, half my business," I said. "Community property. We built this life together." "Did we?" She crossed her arms. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Ethan. Sign the papers and we can both move on with our lives." I looked at my wife of 20 years. Really looked at her. The woman who used to pack my lunch and leave little notes in my toolbox. who used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings and plan our future together. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who saw our marriage as a business transaction to be dissolved for maximum profit. I picked up a pen and signed every page. Marissa's eyes widened slightly. She'd expected a fight, lawyers, months of bitter negotiation. Instead, I handed the papers back with a smile. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it. You want everything? You can have it." Her confusion was almost comical. This wasn't how she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head. She'd prepared for anger, for pleading, for desperate attempts to change her mind. My calm acceptance threw her completely off balance. "I'll have my attorney file these tomorrow," she said finally. "Sounds good. I'll start looking for a new place." That night, Marissa opened a bottle of champagne. She called her mother, her sister, her best friend Tasha. I could hear her voice from the kitchen, triumphant and slightly drunk. "He just gave up," she laughed. 20 years, and he didn't even fight for it." I sat in my workshop until late, running my hands over the oak dining table I'd finished last month. Solid construction, attention to detail, built to last. Everything had a foundation, and if you understood the foundation, you could predict how the whole structure would hold up under pressure. Marissa thought she understood our foundation. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The call came on a Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Marissa filed the papers. I was in the workshop, putting the finishing touches on a custom bookshelf, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. Vera Torin, Marissa's high-powered divorce attorney. "Mr. Jarrett, we need to talk. Are you available to come downtown this afternoon?" "About what?" "There seem to be some complications with the asset division. My client is quite upset." I could hear Marissa's voice in the background, sharp and agitated. Something about the house, the car, numbers not adding up. "I'll be there at 3, I said. The law offices of Torin and Associates occupied 2 floors of a glass tower downtown. Vera Torin was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from winning cases for wealthy clients. Marissa sat beside her, looking like she hadn't slept well. "Mr. Jarrett, thank you for coming." Vera gestured to a chair across from her mahogany desk. "We've discovered some discrepancies in the financial disclosure." "What kind of discrepancies?" Marissa leaned forward. "The house, Ethan. When did you refinance?" I pretended to think about it. "Last year sometime. Interest rates dropped, seemed like a good opportunity to pull out some equity for business expansion." "How much equity?" $950,000. The silence in the room was deafening. Vera's pen stopped moving across her legal pad. Marissa's face went pale. "The house appraised at $1.2 million, Vera said slowly. "If you refinanced for $950, then there's about $200,000 in actual equity," I finished. "Minus selling costs, closing fees, real estate commissions. Probably nets out to maybe $120,000. Your half would be $60,000. Marissa's voice was barely a whisper. "Where did the money go?" "Business expansion, like I said. New equipment, larger workshop space, inventory. It's all documented." Vera flipped through her files. "And the Mercedes?" "Lease. Has been for 3 years. Monthly payments are current, but there's no ownership value. Actually, given the mileage overage and some wear issues, there'll probably be fees when we turn it in." "The business?" "Sold it to my partner Tony last month. Needed to liquidate before the expansion costs got out of hand. He gave me a fair price, $1. The pen slipped from Vera's fingers. $1? "Tony's a good friend. He knew I was in a tight spot financially. Sometimes friendship is worth more than market value." Marissa stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. "You can't do this. You can't just hide everything." "I'm not hiding anything. Every transaction is documented, legal, above board. You wanted half of everything I own. Congratulations, you're getting it." Vera was frantically typing on her laptop. Mr. Jarrett, if you've deliberately concealed assets or engaged in fraudulent transfers, I haven't concealed anything. The refinancing happened 10 months ago, long before any divorce was filed. The business sale was a legitimate transaction between partners. Everything's documented with the appropriate agencies. I stood to leave. Is there anything else? I have a client meeting this afternoon. Client meeting? Marissa's voice cracked. You sold your business. I sold my ownership stake, didn't say I stopped working. Tony hired me as head craftsman. Decent salary, good benefits, no ownership headaches. I smiled. Thanks for the motivation to simplify my life. Walking to the elevator, I could hear Marissa's voice rising behind the closed door. 20 years of marriage, and she'd never bothered to learn the details of how I actually ran my business. Never asked about refinancing, never looked at the paperwork, never questioned why I'd started paying Tony a salary when he'd always worked for equity before. She'd been too busy planning her exit strategy to notice I was planning mine. That evening, I drove to my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom place near the workshop. I'd signed the lease 6 months ago, right after I found the text messages on Marissa's phone. Messages to someone named Jace, full of plans and promises and intimate details I didn't need to read twice. Jace Arnell, personal trainer at Elite Fitness, where Marissa had been spending so much time networking. 28 years old, all muscle and confidence, the kind of guy who posted shirtless selfies and motivational quotes on social media. I'd done my research. Jace lived in a trendy apartment complex downtown, drove a leased BMW, and had a lifestyle that didn't quite match his trainer's salary. Credit reports showed he was leveraged to the hilt. Car payments, rent, credit cards, student loans. Living paycheck to paycheck despite the expensive facade. Perfect for a woman who thought she was about to come into a lot of money. My phone buzzed. Text from Marissa. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. The next morning brought another call from Vera Torin. This time her voice was different, less confident, more careful. Mr. Jarrett, my client would like to discuss a revised settlement. I thought we already had a settlement. I signed the papers, remember? Yes, but given the limited assets available, perhaps we could work out something more equitable. More equitable for who? Perhaps you could buy back your business from your partner, refinance the remaining equity in the house. We could work out payment terms. Why would I do that? I'm happy with the current arrangement. Simple, clean, no complications. Mr. Jarrett, please, my client she's in a difficult position. I almost felt sorry for Vera. She was a good lawyer who'd been played by her own client. Marissa had painted a picture of significant assets and a compliant husband. Instead, she'd gotten a carefully orchestrated financial maze and a man who'd learned to plan ahead. The settlement stands as signed, I said. Marissa gets exactly what she asked for, half of everything I own. But that's essentially nothing. Then I guess we're both starting over. Fair is fair. That afternoon, I drove past our old house. Marissa's car was in the driveway, not the Mercedes, which had been repossessed 2 days earlier, but a rental sedan. Through the kitchen window, I could see her on the phone, gesturing frantically. My phone rang. Lindsay, how are you holding up? She asked. Better than expected. You were right about the planning ahead part. And Marissa? Learning that assumptions can be expensive. Any regrets? I thought about it. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a legal document and a pile of worthless assets. A woman I'd loved who'd seen me as nothing more than a bank account to be drained. Just one, I said. I should have done this 6 months ago. The confrontation came on a Saturday morning. I was loading lumber into my truck when Marissa pulled up in her rental car, tires squealing against the curb. She got out like she was going to war. Designer jeans, expensive boots, the kind of outfit that screamed, I'm still winning, even when she clearly wasn't. We need to talk, now. I kept loading boards. Morning, Marissa. Beautiful day, isn't it? Cut the act, Ethan. I know what you did. What did I do? She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like bank statements. The money from the refinancing, $950,000. Where is it? I told you. Business expansion. Tony's business doesn't show any major equipment purchases. No new inventory. No expansion. I paused, genuinely impressed. You've been doing homework. I hired a forensic accountant. We're going to find every penny you hid, and then we're going back to court. Good luck with that. You think this is funny? You think you can just steal from me? I set down the lumber and looked at her directly. Steal from you? Marissa, we've been married 20 years. When exactly did my money become your money? Community property laws apply to assets acquired during marriage. The house, yes. The business, yes. Money I earned and invested legally before you filed for divorce? That's a different conversation. Her face was getting red, the way it did when she couldn't control a situation. You planned this. You knew I was going to file. I suspected. Hard to miss the signs when your wife starts working late every night and comes home smelling like someone else's cologne. That stopped her cold. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been shame. Jace told me you knew, she said quietly. Jace talks too much. Among other character flaws? He's a good man. He's a 28-year-old personal trainer with $40,000 in credit card debt and a lease payment he can barely afford. But you're right. I'm sure he has other qualities. Marissa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted from anger to something that looked like panic. Problem? I asked. The house payment's due Monday. Better make sure you have the mortgage company's number handy. Ethan, I can't afford the payments, not on my salary alone. Then sell it. With what equity? After commissions and fees, I'll be lucky to break even. I shrugged. Not my problem anymore. You wanted the house, you got it. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. The man she'd married would have tried to fix this, would have felt guilty about her situation, would have found some way to help. That man had died somewhere between finding those text messages and watching her celebrate our divorce over champagne. What happened to you? She whispered. I learned to pay attention. That afternoon, I met Tony at Romano's. My former business partner looked tired. Running a custom furniture operation was harder work than most people realized. How's the new ownership treating you? I asked. Tony grinned. Can't complain. Though I have to say, your ex-wife's lawyer has been calling a lot. About what? Wants to see the books, understand the sale terms, verify the business valuation. What did you tell them? Same thing I told you I'd tell them. The business was worth exactly what I paid for it. $1. Everything else is just equipment and inventory. We'd structured the deal carefully. Tony bought the business name and client list for $1. The equipment, inventory, and workshop space were separate transactions, handled through a holding company Lindsay had helped me set up months earlier. Perfectly legal, completely documented, and absolutely worthless to anyone trying to claim half of a business that no longer existed. Any word from Jace? Tony asked. Haven't heard from him directly, but I'm guessing he's starting to figure out that Marissa's financial situation isn't quite what she advertised. Rough break. For him, maybe. I'm sleeping fine. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I showed it to Tony, who laughed. Jace? Probably, though it could be Marissa. They're starting to sound alike. That evening, I drove past Elite Fitness. Through the windows, I could see Jace working with a client, a middle-aged woman who was clearly more interested in his attention than his fitness expertise. He had that easy smile, the kind that promised things he probably couldn't deliver. My phone rang. Lindsay. Heard you had a visit from your ex today. News travels fast. Small legal community. Vera Torin's been making calls, looking for forensic accountants who specialize in hidden assets. Find any? She found 3. Problem is, you can't hide what doesn't exist. The money from the refinancing went exactly where you said it did. Business expansion, just not the business she thought. And the new business? Clean as a whistle. Tony's the sole owner, you're an employee, and the holding company dissolved after completing its transactions. Nothing to claim, nothing to split. What about the house? Mortgage payments are current through this month. After that, it's Marissa's problem. I thought about our old house. The kitchen where we'd shared morning coffee, the bedroom where we'd planned our future, the workshop where I'd built furniture that would outlast our marriage. 20 years of memories, reduced to a monthly payment she couldn't afford. Any regrets? Lindsay asked. Just one. I should have charged more than $1. The next morning brought another call from Vera Torin. This time, she dispensed with pleasantries. Mr. Jarrett, my client is prepared to file contempt charges if you don't cooperate with our asset investigation. Contempt of what? I've complied with every court order. The spirit of the settlement says she gets half of everything I own. She's getting exactly that. You know that's not what was intended. Then maybe your client should have been more specific. I'm not a mind reader, Ms. Torin. I go by what's written on paper. We can take this back to court. Please do. I'd love to explain to a judge how my wife filed for divorce while planning to take assets she'd never bothered to verify actually existed. The line went quiet for a long moment. What do you want, Mr. Jarrett? I don't want anything. I already have everything I need. This isn't just about money. There's a house, a life you built together. A life she decided to end. I'm just making sure the ending is clean. I hung up and went back to work. Outside, Milwaukee was waking up to another gray November day. Inside my workshop, I was building something new, a dining table for a young couple just starting out, full of hope and plans for the future. 20 years ago, that had been Marissa and me. Now, it was just me, and that was fine too. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from Marissa. Please, we need to talk. I deleted it and kept working. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, at Romano's coffee shop. I was meeting with a client when Marissa walked in, followed by Jace. They looked like they'd been arguing. Her face was tight with stress, his jaw was clenched in frustration. I finished my meeting and was heading to the door when Jace stepped into my path. We need to talk, he said. Up close, he was smaller than I'd expected. Still muscular, still handsome in that generic way that photographs well. But there was something desperate in his eyes. About what? About what you did to Marissa. I didn't do anything to Marissa. I gave her exactly what she asked for. You ruined her life. She ruined her own life. I just stopped subsidizing it. Jace's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually swing at me. Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. She's losing the house. I heard. She can't afford the payments. Not my problem. You could help her, buy back the business, refinance the house. Why would I do that? Because you loved her once. I looked past Jace to where Marissa sat in a corner booth, staring into her coffee cup. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. The confident woman who'd handed me divorce papers had been replaced by someone who was learning that actions have consequences. You're right, I said. I did love her once, but that woman is gone. She made a mistake. She made a choice. She chose you over 20 years of marriage. She chose money over loyalty. She chose to plan my destruction rather than talk to me about whatever was wrong. I stepped closer to Jace, and you chose to help her do it. I didn't know she was married when we first met. But you knew when you kept meeting her. Jace's face reddened. Look, I get that you're angry. I'm not angry. Anger would imply I still care enough to feel something. What I am is done. I walked around him and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Marissa calling my name, but I didn't turn around. That evening, Lindsay called with an update. The house goes into foreclosure next month if she can't make the payment. What about her real estate commissions? Market's slowing down. She's had 2 deals fall through in the past month, and her reputation is starting to suffer. Word gets around in the real estate community. And Jace? Funny you should ask. Turns out Elite Fitness is restructuring. They're cutting back on personal trainers, focusing more on group classes and automated equipment. He's losing his job? Already lost it. Last week. I felt something that might have been satisfaction, but it was hollow. Watching other people's lives fall apart wasn't as rewarding as I'd expected. There's something else, Lindsay continued. Vera Torin wants to meet with you, privately. About what? She didn't say, but she sounded different, less aggressive. The meeting was set for the next afternoon. Vera's office looked the same, expensive furniture, law books, the kind of environment designed to intimidate. But Vera herself seemed tired. Mr. Jarrett, thank you for coming. What can I do for you, Ms. Torin? I want to discuss a possible resolution to this situation. I thought we already had a resolution. The divorce is final, the assets are divided. Yes, but the practical reality... She gestured to a chair. May I speak frankly? I sat down. Please do. My client is in serious financial trouble. She can't afford the house payments, her income has dropped significantly, and her personal situation has become complicated. Personal situation? Mr. Arnell has moved out. Apparently, he was expecting a different financial outcome from the divorce. Shocking. Vera almost smiled. You're not surprised. A 28-year-old trainer with expensive tastes gets involved with a married woman planning a lucrative divorce. When the money doesn't materialize, he finds other options. It's not exactly a complex psychological profile. Marissa is devastated. Marissa is learning. She's also my client, and I have an obligation to represent her interests. Vera leaned forward. What would it take to make this situation more equitable? Define equitable. A settlement that allows her to maintain some financial stability. Keep the house, perhaps, or receive some ongoing support. In exchange for what? What do you want, Mr. Jarrett? I thought about it. What did I want? For months, I'd focused on protecting myself from Marissa's greed, on making sure she couldn't profit from betraying our marriage. But now that the immediate threat was over, what came next? I want her to understand what she threw away, I said finally. I think she's beginning to. I want her to acknowledge that our marriage meant something more than a financial transaction. And if she does, then maybe we can talk about the house. Vera made notes on her legal pad. What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? I'll buy back her half of the house at current market value minus the outstanding mortgage. She can stay there as a tenant, paying fair market rent. If she can't afford the rent, she finds somewhere she can afford. That's actually generous. It's practical. I don't want to own a house I'm not living in, and she needs a place to rebuild her life. What about the business? The business stays as it is. She had her chance to be part of it for 20 years. She chose to cash out. And ongoing support? She's a licensed real estate agent with 20 years of experience. She can support herself. Vera finished writing and looked up. I'll discuss this with my client. You do that, but understand, this is a one-time offer. She can take it or leave it, but she can't negotiate it. I stood to go, then paused at the door. Ms. Torin, next time a client tells you about significant assets in a divorce, you might want to verify they actually exist before filing papers. Noted. That evening, I sat in my apartment, looking out at the city lights. Milwaukee looked different from this angle, smaller, more manageable. 20 years ago, Marissa and I had driven through these same streets, planning our future, talking about the house we'd buy, the business we'd build, the life we'd create together. We'd built that life. And then she'd decided it wasn't enough. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Ethan? Marissa's voice was barely a whisper. Vera told me about your offer. And? I accept. Good. Ethan, I'm sorry. For all of it. For Jace, for the divorce, for trying to take everything. I was scared and angry, and I made terrible choices. I listened to her breathe on the other end of the line. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, she continued, but I needed you to know. I appreciate that. Do you think we could ever be friends again? Not married, but friends? I thought about 20 years of shared history. Good times and bad times, dreams and disappointments, the slow erosion of trust that had led us to this moment. Maybe, I said. Someday, but not yet. I understand. Marissa? Yes? The money from the refinancing. It's in an account in the Cayman Islands. Legal, reported to the appropriate agencies, but not accessible to asset division in a U.S. divorce. The silence stretched for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. I could have given you half of that money, could have made this whole process easy and amicable, but you chose to try to take everything instead of asking for anything. You chose deception over communication. You chose to see me as an obstacle instead of a partner. Ethan, the money stays where it is. Consider it my retirement fund. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, Milwaukee settled into another cold November night. Inside my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and opened a book. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work building furniture for other people's homes. Next week, I'd start looking for a house of my own, something smaller, simpler, designed for one person instead of two. 20 years of marriage were over. The rest of my life was just beginning. 6 months later, I was putting the finishing touches on a custom kitchen table when Tony walked into the workshop with a newspaper. Thought you might want to see this, he said, folding it open to the real estate section. There was a photo of Marissa at some charity event, smiling next to a sold sign. The caption read, "Local realtor Marissa Jarrett celebrates record sales month." She's doing better, I observed. Seems like it. Word is she's been working 18-hour days building her client base back up. Good for her. Tony studied my face. You mean that? I do. She made mistakes, but she's not a bad person. Just someone who lost her way for a while. Any regrets about the divorce? I considered the question. The past 6 months had been the most peaceful of my adult life. No arguments about money, no tension over career priorities, no walking on eggshells around someone who'd grown to resent everything about our shared existence. About the divorce? No. About how it happened? Maybe. Think you'll ever remarry? Ask me in 5 years. My phone buzzed. Text from Lindsay. Drinks tonight? I have news. We met at Murphy's, a bar near her office that served decent burgers and minded its own business. Lindsay was already there when I arrived, looking pleased with herself. What's the news? I asked. Remember that holding company we set up? The one that handled your business transactions? What about it? It just received an offer to purchase some of its dissolved assets. Seems there's a furniture company in North Carolina that's very interested in your client list and design portfolio. How much? Lindsay slid a piece of paper across the table. The number made me blink twice. That's substantial. Turns out 20 years of custom furniture work builds quite a reputation. Who knew? I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. What's the tax situation? Clean. The holding company was structured as a pass-through entity, and since the assets were acquired before your divorce was final, they're not subject to community property claims. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying watching good planning pay off. You could have been bitter and vindictive, could have tried to hurt Marissa just for the sake of hurting her. Instead, you protected yourself legally and gave her a chance to rebuild. She's the one doing the rebuilding. I just stopped enabling her to avoid it. Same result, better process. We ordered dinner and talked about other things. Lindsay's latest case, my plans for expanding the workshop, whether the Brewers had any chance of making the playoffs. Normal conversation between siblings, without the undercurrent of crisis that had dominated our talks for the past year. Walking to my car afterward, I passed the coffee shop where Marissa and Jace had confronted me months earlier. Through the window, I could see a young couple sharing dessert, leaning across the table toward each other, lost in that early stage of love when everything seems possible. I'd been that young once. Marissa and I both had. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped leaning toward each other and started pulling apart. Maybe that was inevitable. Maybe some marriages are meant to last forever, and others are meant to teach you what you need to know for the next phase of your life. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice. Ethan, it's Marissa. Hi, I saw the newspaper article. Congratulations on the sales record. Thank you. That means thank you. A pause. I wanted to call because I have some news. Oh? I'm getting married. That stopped me cold. Congratulations. Anyone I know? His name is David. He's a client, was a client, a widower, buying his first house after his wife passed away last year. Sounds nice. He is. He's nothing like Jace. Nothing like you either, but in a good way. He's steady, kind, doesn't care about money or status or any of the things I thought were important. I'm happy for you, Marissa. Really. Are you? Because I need you to be okay with this. Not for legal reasons. I know the divorce is final, and you don't have any say in my life anymore. But because I need to know you're not still angry. I leaned against my car, looking up at the Milwaukee skyline. Lights were coming on in office buildings and apartments, people settling in for the evening, making dinner, helping kids with homework, planning tomorrow's activities. Ordinary life, continuing its ordinary rhythm. I'm not angry, I said. I haven't been angry for months. What are you then? Grateful. Grateful? For 20 good years, even if they ended badly. For learning what I'm capable of when I have to protect myself. For discovering that I can be happy alone. I paused. And for the reminder that people can change, can learn from their mistakes, can build something better from the ruins of something that didn't work. You always were better with words than I was. I had more time to think about it. Ethan? Yeah? I hope you find someone who appreciates what I was too stupid to see. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Either way, I'll be fine. I know you will. You always were stronger than you looked. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a few minutes, processing the conversation. Marissa was getting remarried, to someone who sounded like everything Jace wasn't. Stable, mature, interested in building something lasting, rather than just enjoying the ride. Good for her. She'd learned from her mistakes, found someone who valued the same things she was learning to value, and was building a new life on a foundation of honesty rather than deception. I started the car and drove home to my apartment. Tomorrow, I'd call the furniture company in North Carolina and discuss their offer. Next week, I'd start looking at houses again, not because I needed more space, but because I was ready to put down roots somewhere new. The divorce was over. The revenge was complete. The rest of my life was waiting. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to it.